So without us, whoever's going to write the warrant gets back in their car, drives back to the office, gets there, types it all out, wait for the judge, get it signed, drive back to the office to make copies of it, make copies, and then head out back to the scene with it. With CloudGavel, the officer can just walk to their unit.
Welcome back, viewers, watchers, listeners. I'm your host, Tyler Owen, and I've got a co-host today. This will be your third time?
Yeah, I think so. About third time.
Yeah, Clint had to run down to Galveston. If you don't know, Clint McNear, the other co-host for the Blue Grit podcast, is also Texas FOP's state secretary. So he had to run down to Galveston and perform what they call the oath of office. Galveston Municipal Police Association is now becoming a state FOP lodge. And so he had to go in there and perform his duties with Texas FOP. So
I got to fill his shoes.
I figured what better way to bring in the man, the myth, the legend that walks the hallways of our state capital, John Wilkerson.
JW.
J-Dub. So welcome back, man.
How you man, I appreciate you having me, man. I've been doing great.
You know, I was joking around with somebody the other day. They were asking, what the hell lobbyists do during the off season? And so I did not throw you under the bus. They kind of alluded to the fact that it was nothing but golf and cards and play. And so you guys actually stay pretty busy.
I'm not a golfer. I'll tell you that.
Either.
I develop Tourette's every time I try to play golf. So if I can get some free time, I love fishing, and I've been able to do a lot of that lately. Thanks, Tony Reich, by the way.
Yep.
I mean, even during the off time, we got a lot of work that we're doing, looking at potential bills, because members are talking to us all throughout the year. It's a message that we put out all the time is if you have an idea for legislative fix, bounce it over to us. And so
now's the time to start doing that.
Yeah, now's the time to start doing that. We got to really vet it, really research it, because you get a lot of ideas that they sound good because they'll fix that issue right there for that officer in their area. But it may cause a cascading effect in a different area of the state, because we all know that, and it kind of goes into what we're going to be talking about here today. Yeah. We know that you may have a judge over here, and I'll give you a great example. Back when I used to do DWIs all the time, you had the DIC 23, and then there was subsection A that says contained in my offense reports, and you put your offense report number in there, total number of pages, sign it, have another officer sign it as affirming oath. We had a judge one time that even though you put that, if you didn't check the box that says that I am certified to administer the SFSTs and HGN, that judge would automatically rule in favor of the defendant on the ALR hearing. So, when you have things that are bouncing back and forth like that, right, different mentalities in different parts of the state, you really got to do a lot of due diligence to make sure that any legislative idea that works here, make sure that's not going to create some other issue over here.
Well, and I think it's a good point that why you came on today, because who we have on today is Casey, and I was going to screw your last name up anyway. So
Roussel.
Yeah, South
See,
Louisiana.
I messed it up. That's
it. He is with the company that is called CloudGavel, and we're going to talk about different accesses to different search warrants, arrest warrants. So, man, thank you for coming on. You are we have a field rep named Leighton Gennari that is from your neck of the woods, that is a diehard LSU fan. And so welcome aboard, man.
Thank you so much, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
I love what you guys do.
I see you sporting the LSU colors today. I'm sure that was by accident, no design.
Yeah, I'm a greenie. I went to Tulane, but we always support. Yeah, we got to support our state schools.
Yeah, absolutely. So talk about, we like kind of start the podcast off of, where'd you grow up? How did you get involved with what you do now? And kind of just tell us more about you.
Yeah, appreciate it. We grew up in South Louisiana, stayed there, had the privilege of going to Tulane, played some football there.
What part of South Louisiana?
A little bitty town in St. James Parish.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's those right in the middle of Baton Rouge and New Orleans along the interstate. So grew up there, went to high school, not far from there, then on to Tulane, and got out. Love technology, started as a stockbroker and did all of that stuff, and just my love was sort of technology. So I kind of bridged from that into starting tech stuff, software stuff, and one thing led to another, and all these years later, this is where we are.
Did you have anybody in law enforcement or related to law enforcement that you kind of leaned on a little bit, or just have an interest in it?
No, I think what kind of stirred the interest was a very good dear friend of ours was a sheriff locally where we grew up. and we started with video conferencing between the judges and the jails to try to eliminate the need of transporting prisoners and all the chaos that goes with that. So that's kind of how we started, trying to solve that need. And not long after that, was kind of when video conferencing took off and all the big boys, the Microsofts and Adobes got into it, and we were like, all right, we need to pivot and do something different.
Zoom.
And so for those are not our non-law enforcement listeners, we do actually have some non-law enforcement listeners. You think about the logistics, I'll just throw it out there. Dallas County, Harris County, the very large metro areas here in Texas, they have typically the magistrates that are right there inside the jails. And so what that looks like is it's a very large room. You bring in, all of your defendants that have been arrested within the last couple of hours. They get magistrated, and then their bonds are set. In some situations, such as several counties where I was in East Texas and even some here in Central Texas, is that those magistrates are not 24 hours a day. And so these defendants have to sit in jail and wait for these, magistrates to come in. And in some cases, they have to transport said, inmates to where those magistrates are located inside a courtroom. And so if you can imagine, with law enforcement being the manpower crunch is what we have, having that ability to go digital and have that ability to have it on, a TV, it cut down and it was a huge resource for us, our jail staff. And our jail staff's always kind of somewhat forgotten about in law enforcement. So what a huge asset for them.
Yep, and that's kind of how we bridged into the electronic warrants side, was where, okay, if we can eliminate the need for prisoners to have to travel to court, can we eliminate the need for officers to have to travel and find judges to do their job? And that's what led to warrants and kind of started what we created.
Now, I will ask you, there's been some challenging judges that I dealt with in East Texas. Probably the most arrogant one that I ever dealt with was a county judge there in the local county that I worked at. Not real personable and very, very, very hard to get along with. Was it hard to get judges on board with this program? I would think not, because it's a convenience to them.
When we started, it was back in 2007. Several times we met with judges and they would flip their computer screen around and solitaire was the only icon on the screen. That's all they would do.
Yep.
Everything else was paper. And, if I can't tell you how many times we heard the excuse, hey, come back when the next judge comes in. Thankfully today, all the new judges that are coming in are younger. They do everything from a cell phone. So now it's kind of the reverse, where we'll deal with new judges and the thought of having to sign something with an ink pen is absurd to them. Like, they want to know, why can I not do everything on my phone? So it's really changed as technology has grown. So judges are very much now in favor of modernizing at least the simple things.
Now, have you run into any issue with, maybe a judge in this area likes something specific to them? Because Tyler mentioned to you, before I came over to the membership services side or field services side rather, I was managing our leaders program, and one of the things that we found is like our blood search warrant on that program.
Yep.
You'd have West Texas county that, okay, the county attorney looks at it and they're like, oh yeah, that looks good. But then you go to a different county and they say, oh no, we want this wording in there or that wording. Did you run into any of that with maybe some of the wording?
We did. There's some variation. So we kind of took the philosophy as a company is that we're not here to tell you how to do your job. We're going to give you the platform to do your job. So if you have one county that wants things worded a different way, looking a different way, that's fine. You tell us how you want the output to look. We'll make it look just to keep you happy and do your job. So we've really tried extremely hard not to force things on people and say, like, it's not out the box. This is, you got to do everything the way everyone else is doing. Through the 18 states we're in, we've got some major variances, just like we've got some huge similarities. So judge wants to do something different, they're more than happy to do it.
In Texas, we have 254 counties, and sometimes there's 254 different ways of doing things.
And interpretations.
And then on top of that, every law book that you get in Texas, or most all law books that you get, they have some blank pages in the back. You know what those are for, right?
They write their own rules.
Write their own laws.
Oh, my God.
Yep.
Yeah, so we face that, and the problem becomes firsthand, especially when you're dealing with the state agencies, the state troopers and stuff that have to go to every one of these counties.
Yep.
So we've designed and built the system to where, all right, which county are you going to? And based on what county they choose, everything will format and fit for that county. So troopers are not trying to figure out, I wonder what just this judge wants or what this attorney wants. The system will do all the work for them. All they have to do is just put in the facts and the reason of what they're trying to do. So we really eliminated, one, the human error and the mistakes and things that can get these warrants thrown out just because of, what different judges and state attorneys want to see in these documents.
The last agency that I came from, the computer system database that we had was Odyssey. And I'm trying to think, CIS, I think, was the one I had at the police department. But my point is this, is that every single police department or agency across Texas has different platforms of what they keep their databases in. Does your product or your system, does it also sync with a lot of the law enforcement databases? And how does that work and how does that look like?
So the short answer is yes. So we're fully web-based, fully in the cloud, AWS, GovCloud. We handle all the security and stuff for it. But we have what's called an open API. So all of the data inside of it belongs to the agency. It's not our data. We're the custodians of it. So we give them, hey, to go to your RMS vendor, your CAD vendor, whoever it is, if it's the court side, the CMS, and say, all right, here's the API to pull all of the data. You can do whatever you want with it, pull it into your system. It's totally up to you. It's your data, pull it. Or they can keep our system as the quote-unquote repository of it and then continue things in our system. So getting the warrant signed is just the first piece. The next piece is servicing the warrant. How are you going to go and actually execute it and track it? And what if the individual is in a different county than you? You have to get the warrant there for them to possibly execute it for you. So all of that is involved. And then the third layer is, I may know that we have an outstanding warrant for somebody or even a bench warrant, and it may be an NCIC depending on if it meets that threshold. But if I'm looking for a guy and he's stopped 4 counties over, chances are that patrol officer has no clue that there's a warrant out for me if it's not an NCIC on it. So the next layer is, okay, how do we share all of that data? How do we get everything that's in the system available in the hands of the officers when they need it most? And normally that's on a routine traffic stop. How can we get as much information in that officer's hands before he even steps out of the car? That's the ultimate goal there. But again, you need participation to accomplish a lot of that.
So what you're saying, we are located right now in Travis. You're in Bell, so that's a neighboring county. So theoretically, that if we're just to the north of us, what is Waco?
Bell is not neighboring, by the way. There's Wilco between us.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought a little sliver of. I'm new to the area, so don't give me too much shit.
Okay, you East Texas guys.
Okay, all right. So let's just say hypothetically,
might as well be from Louisiana.
Bell, you're right. I probably should. So if hypothetically, if Travis and Bell County, since they don't neighbor, if they're both on the program and both their systems are synced, then I could be on the side of the road, and I, being in Bell County, and the suspect was from Travis, if the documents originated from Travis County and Travis County granted permission for the documents to be shared, I theoretically could look at all the documents submitted to include possibly probable cause affidavits for search warrants. I could basically look up all the information I wanted to if they chose to share that information with other agencies.
Yes. So a perfect example would be if I'm filling out an arrest warrant on somebody. Okay, I may know an address or multiple addresses. I may know multiple vehicles that's associated with this individual that may not be pertinent to the actual arrest warrant, but they're linked to this individual that's in it. So again, I can have that warrant and this individual, say it was issued in Travis County, he's rolling to New Orleans, he's stopped in Beaumont or he's stopped in Baton Rouge. When that officer runs that license plate, in our system, we'll detect, hey, there's an arrest warrant out for this guy that's associated with this vehicle. It might not be the guy driving, but at least that officer is going to know, I'm going to take extra caution before I walk up to this car because there's a warrant that's associated with this car. It doesn't mean that this is the individual driving. So we're just trying to give the officer more pieces to the puzzle. So when the officer's on side the road, he just, again, has access to data that normally he wouldn't have.
But let's even take it a step further. Let's say that hypothetically, let's set egos aside because that's typically what happens with administrations and especially with counties and stuff. Let's say that everybody's on this shareable platform. The cool thing about y'all's system is, let's say that they do stop John Wilkerson driving a black Ford F-150, and they do stop John Wilkerson driving a black Ford F-150. They do stop John Wilkerson driving a black Ford F-150. They do stop John Wilkerson driving a black Ford F-150. They do stop John Wilkerson driving a black Ford F-150. They do stop John Wilkerson driving a black and all that's contained. And let's say it has to do with an aggravated robbery. Let's say it has to do with an aggravated sexual assault. It's a very complex investigation, and some of that detail is inside the arrest warrant. Whatever the arresting agency that they find on the arrest warrant could assist them because they can see it. John Wilkerson was wearing a blue blazer at the time of the offense, had a firearm, has a cell phone, the cell phone, blah, blah, and all this is contained in there. That patrol officer, if he has the mindset of investigative mindset, he technically could build the case even further and build that case bigger, knowing what he knows on the screen based off the arrest warrant and potential previous search warrants executed.
Exactly. And right now it's a huge mind shift and thought process that's changing right now because, as you remember, it used to be all about the little black notebook. That's where the majority of the data that officers knew, and that's where it was contained in the head of the individual officer in some notebook somewhere in some desk drawer that no one knew about. Then it got to, okay, we're all going to RMS systems. Everything is going to be inside of our local RMS system. Well, that's great. Number one, you have to know what you're looking for. Number two, even the county next door to you who may have the same vendor, y'all two systems aren't talking to each other, so it doesn't help anybody out. So that's where we've really tried to embrace to, all right, we're going to create a system that allows the officers to decide what they think is important or may not be important, put it in the system, and now that can be shared through everybody within the system on it. Now, does it mean sometimes an officer may have to do some double work? I got to put some stuff in my mobile CAD, I got to put some stuff in my RMS, and now I got to put some stuff in CloudGavel? Yes, and we can try to fix some of that with integrations. But we always argue, at least the point I always make, is that double entry worth an officer's life? How many times we see an officer shot or killed and someone says, well, I knew that guy was bad. Well, great, you knew, but that officer didn't know. So it's like, okay, can we change our mindset and start putting some of this data somewhere where we can now share it and get it in the hands of officers, not only so they're more protected, but officers can make the right decision in real time instead of just showing up and saying, I've got no idea what's going on. I've got to treat everybody as a suspect until I figure out what's going on. So it's kind of a double way we're approaching this.
How receptive are some of these RMS companies being with the integrations?
Depends. Some of them are really good with it.
I mean, they have to see you as a competitor almost.
Some we're not an RMS, and we have no desire to be one. So most of what we kind of position ourselves as we're an integrator. We have what we do, the problems we solve, but we want to be a centralized place where data can exchange because, even in populous states, you may have one RMS vendor who's the leader may only have 10% of the state because there's so many RMS vendors. Well, in our case, we almost have every agency in the state sometimes or statewide contracts, so everyone's using us. So it's really easy for someone like us to come and say, look, let us just integrate and share the data and move it around. You do what you do, we'll do what we do, but we can get the information in the hands of the officers, and we really don't care what RMS you're using. We'll talk to all of them.
Are y'all seeing with leaders? Do you remember what program leaders used, or was it just simply like
So leaders was a standalone. It was now it's gone through a lot of changes since I left because I've been gone from there for 7 years now or so. And Brian Grubbs is running it now. He's done some amazing work with that system. But at the time it was a system that was built. We paid the programmers to build that system. And then we would have, we had a small handful of RMS systems that would work with us to build the patches. But the problem is most of them wanted to charge, 20, 30, 40 and more thousand upwards, to do this integration system. In fact, Bell County, we still use leaders, and it got to the point where you're talking about double work, right? So I stopped somebody. The great thing about that leaders program is it's web based. So most of the time, I've got 90% of my report done before the record gets on scene.
They got internet in Bell County?
They do. We have cell towers too.
Oh shit!
Yeah. So I have most of it done, and then when I get back to the office, all I do is go into our RMS system. And I'm not going to name it because I don't want to get Tmpa sued after this podcast because I hate that damn RMS system. I want to find who created it and take him to a ball game. But anyways, so we get back and basically I go into our system because we have a great administration that says, just go into our RMS, put suspect information, vehicle information, and then on the narrative put see leaders report.
Yep.
And it works out great that way. So, and that's because that particular RMS was another one of those that viewed the leaders program as a competition almost. And one particular program that we had communicated with, we brought them in, talked to them about what we had. I said, hey, a lot of agencies are using you guys. And the system, I've used it years before, and it was a good system. But they kind of ghosted us. We told them, hey, here's what we'd like to do. They ghosted us. And then about 5 months later, they have their own DWI reporting, enter it once and it goes in all the forms kind of thing. So, but I bet that's got to be a challenge for you as well of having these meetings and them seeing your product.
It is. And so every one of our clients that whenever they go out for a new RMS, RFP, integrating with us is a mandatory requirement of doing it. So, and again, most of the time with us, it's just pulling data or sending status updates to us. So it's really straightforward. And again, they know that we're not going to show up and try to compete against them with it. So you have that challenge, but also a lot of these smaller agencies, they don't have the ability to buy $1 million RMS systems. They're stuck with smaller ones that are, call it, not as good resources to deal with on it. So there's always a challenge, but it's a challenge that we're up for, and we're not going to give up and quit just because something's difficult.
Yeah.
There's still agencies out there to this day that Big Chief tablet.
Okay.
That's their reports.
Still paper.
I started on a Word document, green screen, and we was transitioning.
It wasn't long ago. I walked into a sheriff's office, and the sheriff had an old typewriter typing out his offense report.
Wow. Well, so let's just say hypothetically, patrol officer shows up for domestic disturbance, knocks on the door. Of course, the PC side of this, you're not going to. That doesn't matter to you, but they show up, they kick the door because they feel like they need to go, help a victim inside, and they see 5 kilos of cocaine. Obviously, they need to secure the scene and get a search warrant. Depending on how the agency works, they would essentially use y'all's product, type out the affidavit for the search warrant, hit a button, and then kind of explain the process after that.
So without us, they have to secure the scene, which means they have to bring in multiple units and officers to show up and secure the scene while whoever's going to write the warrant gets back in their car, drives back to the office, gets there, types it all out, prints it, gets back in the car, drives to the judge, wherever the judge, he or she may be, wait for the judge, get it signed, drive back to the office to make copies of it, make copies, and then head out back to the scene with it. With CloudGavel, the officer can just walk to their unit, sit there on their MDT in their car, type it all out, fill it all out, route it to the judge. If it's anything like here in Texas, if it's an arrest warrant accompanying with it, we've got all the built-in video conferencing for the judge to, hey, raise your right hand and swear them in all through the technology. If it's a search warrant, they can swear them in via the phone here in Texas. And then officer gets it back, it's signed electronically, they can go and do what they need to do. Everything is there. Once they're done, they go back to their car and they can fill out the entire return, submit the return back to the court of everything we just seized inside of the house, all done electronic. The officer never had to leave the scene for the whole process.
Now, who's responsible for returning it to the court?
The system will automatically route it to the proper path it goes for that county. So in some cases, it goes to the judge, and the judge will actually sign it. In some counties, the judge just says, look, I want to know it was submitted within the legal time frame. It has to be submitted. I don't care about signing it. Just publish it back to the court. Right. So it kind of depends on where you're at and what process the court has. We accommodate both, and it gets published right back to the court.
Does it receive a number to like the district clerk's office? And I mean, how does that all work?
So that's another thing in Texas where it varies tremendously. Some
may have a JP signing the warrant,
right?
Yeah. So like here in Travis County,
which is not a good thing to do.
Yeah, we can. That's a whole nother debate. Yeah. So like here in Travis, each court has their own numbering system, and depending on what type of document it is, if it's felony, misdemeanor, if it's going to municipal court, a district court, with it. So they'll call or get the right numbers in the system for whatever type warrant it is. They can either do that beforehand. In some cases, the warrant number's put on after the fact. with it when it gets to the clerk office. So we really have the flexibility on our side to design it and set it up and configure it exactly how the county wants. So, in Florida, it's completely different than what it is in Texas. So we have to have the flexibility of routing those documents accordingly.
Wow. Pretty interesting.
So it sounds like it's a lot more than just warrants. With like the municipal court system, I think we were talking a little bit about that. So the documents that like the municipal courts need for, them to proceed with citations, stuff like that. Does it have all those legal forms on it as well, or?
So there's no limitation on what forms we can put. So any document, any form that you want, we're getting ready to start with all the protective orders. So if deputy shows up on a scene and there's a battered woman and they need a protective order, the deputy can sit there with the individual and get it done and submit it to the court right away and have that signed immediately.
Well, I've got good news on that, by the way. One good thing that came out of this last legislative session, lawmakers told OCA, Office of Court Administration, that they have to develop a standardized protective order application and a standardized protective order. And once they do that, and it's already out there, every peace officer has to use that same application, and every judge has to use that same protective order. Yep. So that should alleviate.
Yeah, and we've heard about that and had some really good meetings with the state courts on that, and we've been prepping for it. But the standardization of the forms is a big one, and then the process is more you can standardize, especially for the state guys that run all over the place. The better and more efficient the whole process works.
Yep. Yeah, I was shocked. Somebody was telling me, I think it was the great state of Missouri.
Oh, God.
I think somebody was telling me that there in that state, it doesn't matter where you are in the state. If you arrest somebody for DWI, all the paperwork is the same. The report is the same. Like, they have everything standardized. It's not, in Texas, the only thing we have standardized is the DIC forms.
Right.
And then,
well, there's more, but yes, theoretically, state-wise, as far as DPS.
Well, and it doesn't matter. Like what I was hearing about that other state, and I want to say it was Missouri. I keep saying that now, and I don't mean to. But from what I heard is it doesn't matter if you're a two-man agency in that state or the state agency. All the DWI, the reports are the same, format's the same, everything, and I thought, and a lot of officers have reached out to me and said, hey, why don't we do something like that? And I have to explain to them, well, because you have all these, RMS companies out there, and they want their slice of the pie. They want, they want to make their money off of their product. And so they will pay their lobbyists to get that. If any bills filed on that, they will pay them to get that killed quick.
Yeah. And the DUIs, we normally see both extremes where either they want it as vague as possible to let the officer in their own words describe what's taking place, or they go all the way to, no, we want to go check boxes to the HGN, the walk and turn, all of that stuff, where it leaves zero room for vagueness or interpretation, because then it's easier for the DAs to get in court and prosecute it on it. So you see the majority of them are leading more towards, let's, again, walk the officer through step by step with most detail as possible, so when it gets to court, we have a solid case and not trying to get an attorney, twisted in their own words.
You mentioned something earlier about the notepads, and just to the north of us, if I'm not mistaken, the Michael Morton Act came out of Williamson County from some mistakes that were made from the district attorney's office, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
For the patrol officer listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, to the new boot, new trainee, if you're not familiar with that, read up on it. I know that anybody that's in CID absolutely should know and will know what I'm referring to. But if you're not practicing attaching your notes, scanning them as a PDF, and attaching those documents that you're writing on scene just for a simple, Class A assault, Class B assault, I would start that now. And the reason why is because it is imperative that all of your notes get submitted because of that Michael Morton Act. Let me give you another example. Let's say that me and JW are brothers, and I'm going to sack him, or that Casey here is going to sack us up for assault, family violence, and I was the aggressor. And he's seen on body cam writing notes down on a piece of paper, and that note's not in evidence, or it's not submitted with the offense report. That could be an issue later on at the criminal trial. And so when you said that earlier, when you were scanning those documents in, it just needs to be, we need to start doing a better job on our end to not raise that doubt. Everything these days, back when I started, we didn't have body cams. We had in cars, but for the most part, the general public believed us because we didn't have a lot of cop shows in the first 48. And so now people just believe what they see on camera. And they think that if it's not inside evidence, that we just restored it because we were trying to be deceitful. And that's not the case all the time. So do yourself a favor.
I want to take that a step further. So a lot of prosecutors started putting that word out to their officers, telling them, hey, if you make notes, make sure you make a copy of that. Mm-hmm. And, cops, we can be some creative critters sometimes. And so we started seeing some of those that didn't want to take the time to make the copy. So what they did is they wrote it on their Palm Pilot, any note that they had. And that turned the prosecutor saying, well, now you either need to hold your hand in front of your in-car video camera or photocopy your hand and put it there. So don't try to do anything stupid like that. To our listeners, watchers, whatever, don't just make a copy of the damn note.
Yeah, and the searching capabilities with the technologies these days is unreal. Everyone's talking about AI and all of that right now, but when you have all of that data that's stored digitally, the ability to search it and mine it and find links between it all and how these things are associated with each other is tremendous. We're big believers. Hey, take the time, put at least the key identifiers in there, put the vehicles, put the individuals, put license plates, put tattoos, put all these things in there that can be identified and associated with each other in these systems, because hey, you never know when one little fact is the thing that's going to break an entire case.
Well, you're building a database. You're essentially building a database for other agencies that you may not even know, what'll happen. Green eyes, brown eyes, whatever, 13-inch. If you're building a database and we're sharing all this information, I never understood why agencies are so hesitant about why they don't want to share their information with the other agencies.
It used to be horrible. It's gotten better because we've been able to show the value that comes from it all.
Yeah.
And I think most people are tired of seeing these mass shooters and these school shootings and all these things. And after the fact, we all find out that, all these people knew this.
Yeah.
It all seems like certain people weren't really surprised that this happened. So a lot of the technology is trying to figure out, okay, how do we provide answers to you that you didn't even think about the question to ask yet? How can we look at what's going on and start doing some predictive modeling to say, hey, all of these things are happening here. Maybe you want to pay attention. Maybe you want to look into this with it to try to give some, again, predictive modeling to officers. And look, I'm not saying that we're trying to give all of this to your standard officer that's running around on patrol. But most agencies now they all have investigators. A lot of them have analyst units on it that's trying to interpret all of this data with it. And then you have the people at the state level, where if certain things rise to certain levels, you can route this to the right people that can look at it and say, okay, do we have something here to pay attention to?
Well, and I guess I should ask this. You're going to find in Texas that of the 254 counties that are in Texas, I would say 230 and 25 are going to be all rural for the most part. Mm-hmm. That's an accurate number. Yeah. I'm going to use Bell County is not rural per se because they got Killeen, but let's just say Bell County. They've got Bell County, they got Killeen, right?
Oh, man, we got like 17, 18 law enforcement agencies in that county.
Okay, so let's say that we're going to implement your product. Would it not behoove all of the, once again, I think we're seeing a better part of this for law enforcement, but I think that if all the police chiefs and the sheriff got together, got in a room and said, hey, there's this great product called CloudGavel or whatever, and got together and said, hey, let's get on the same sheet of music, and went to the DA's office, because people don't know that if a proactive, pro-law enforcement, pro-public safety district attorney, they have funds available for programs such as this.
Yeah.
So would it not make more sense for all the agencies to be on one program such as CloudGavel than have it agency specific?
Absolutely. And I'm sure we have some, but I don't know if I could name them for you, of a county where there's any agencies within that county that's excluded that doesn't use the system. Normally it's a county-wide deployment. And the key thing is that we're not coming in in challenging the law of what's required. All we're doing is changing the process. And so everyone who looks at it says, hey, we still have to get the warrant. Like you still have to have the same requirements in the warrant. You have to do everything. The only thing you're doing is you're not driving anymore. So, okay, well, we're already spending the money. We're spending on a fuel. So we got the money. So it's not about going find new money and all of the overtime. The other big challenge right now is officers. People can't find officers. We know the problem right now with trying to find officers. Well, we're saving all of the time that they're spent sitting in a car, sitting in a courtroom, waiting for a judge to sign something. So we're getting all the time back. And then from the DA's perspective, wait, we've got a system that will help these officers write a cleaner warrant that's better. When it gets to me, my case is not screwed up because I can't make sense of the warrant. Okay, I'm in. And then the judges, wait, officers aren't banging on my door in the middle of the night waking me up to sign a piece of paper that may be wrong that I have to send them back 3 times to fix.
With a prisoner in the passenger seat?
Yeah, that's happened before.
Oh, I know.
It's happened before. So
I didn't do it, by the way.
Yeah, so across the spectrum, everyone has looked at our product and says, we've got some things to fight about, but this ain't one of them. Yeah. This makes perfect sense. Let's just do it. It benefits everyone.
Would you agree that in your experience, I mean, obviously you are going to push the product, but would you not agree that it is cheaper for an agency to look at this product by the time that they add up the amount of fuel and they add up the amount of overtime, that it's cheaper to go with this product versus having the expenditures of paying the officers overtime for dealing with search warrant type issues?
Oh, absolutely. We've got an NFL city as a client, and when they factor in overtime, travel time, and fuel, they save over $1 million a year using our product.
$1 million.
Yep.
And I'm going to say this, and it's not. I looked at your website, so for those that are watching, listening to us, I'm not promoting your product at all. It does sound intriguing to me, and it does sound like it's something that, hey, I'm going to look into. But to the administrators that are watching this, keep in mind, and that's why I asked if it does municipal court, because every city out there, and county for that matter, when they collect money on traffic citation revenue, there is a specified amount that has to go into an account called court security and technology fee. It can only be used on one of those. So every city out there already has a technology account through that, and so that might be an option to the administrators that are looking. If they're looking at going to your system or a similar system, keep that in mind.
And the last piece I'll throw into that is, so you always think about, okay, we talked about everyone that's on the criminal justice side, but how about the public that's on the receiving end of these warrants? So in the old process, we had no idea if officers actually stood before a judge and raised their right hand. I see a judge's signature, but did the judge sign that? Did the secretary sign that? When did they sign it? Did they sign it after I kicked down the door, after I made the arrest? It was all on, okay, we're trusting the government that they did what they were supposed to do. With CloudGavel, everything is audited. Every single click is audited. So all of the defense attorneys, all of the public defenders, they're like, look, I've got a detailed audit trail on every document of when it was created, when it was submitted, when the judge looked at it, how long the judge read it. What if I'm looking at a document and it shows the judge took less than a minute to read an entire warrant?
I was just thinking about that.
What's the chances that the judge actually read it versus rubber stamping it? So all of that is now logged. So we've given an enormous level of transparency to the public where they can say, all right, we at least know that everyone's doing their job when they're supposed to do it the right way. Now, or do we have judges that sign in warrants that maybe on the line of probable cause? Maybe, but that's why we have an appellate system. You can go and challenge that in court. But at least the process is true. The process is being done the right way and holding everyone accountable.
Yeah, and I've seen judges out there that, they have faith in an officer, right? Yeah. They've worked with them before, and they're like, you know what? Yeah, just send that over, and I'll sign it real quick, whatever the case may be. But to your point, it's kind of a funny story. When those things happen, and you kind of get that sense of complacency, and you don't do your due diligence. I know an officer that his sergeant entrusted him. Because he always did great reports, and he got in the office one day, and he's kind of a jokester, but he get in the office one day, and the end of his report or end of his shift is about the time that they're doing reports. Well, he was mad because day shift had come in, and he got sent to a call, and he's like, why didn't they send damn day shift to this? So he comes back and he writes his report, and he starts his off with his report is, on such and such date, such and such time, while in the report writing room trying to get my damn job done, and day shift was out in the parking lot fucking off. And he submitted it, and his sergeant, he did it as a joke to his sergeant, and his sergeant was like, hey, you know what? This guy always writes good reports. Approved. So, and that kind of stuff happens. And so, yeah, I think that having a system out there that would have the kind of the checks and balances associated with it. Yeah. And, years back, I wrote a search warrant, and I put the wrong date on the thing. Now, granted, the prosecutor had to do a little extra work on that, but it didn't kill the case. But, having systems in place that will help avoid situations like that, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and especially with all the various different charges, as you guys know as cops, hey, depending on what you're charging someone with, you have to make clear articulation to the court that you did X things before you took certain action as an officer on it. Well, we're hoping the officers trained and maybe have encountered that situation before to do it, but a lot of times they haven't. So, we've tried to go the extra step that, all right, depending on what you're charging with, make sure your probable cause has these things in it. Yep. If you don't address all of these things in your probable cause, it's not going to meet the barrier of the law, and the judge is going to be forced to reject it because you missed something. Now, you may have a chance to go back and add it and fix it, but again, that takes time. It takes back and forth with it. So the technology is there to try to help these officers, do their job with the tools in front of them.
Speaking of Clint McNear, him, Joe Gamaldi, and some other guys just got back from Axon, had a summit out in Glendale, Arizona. And there was some other pretty neat, less lethal, obviously Axon, having the body cams, but they also specialize in the tasers. There's some pretty neat, less lethal weapons that Axon is introducing to make law enforcement officers safer. But one of the neat things was body cams. They are trying to dock body cams and have some type of it is AI, but it's a summary. So when the officer docks his body cam, it essentially gives a summary of, because that body cam is officer specific. It says this officer, this date, and gives a whole printout or a summary of what that officer went to in that call. And so they're trying that out. So speaking of technology, my point is this, is that if we don't look at and at least embrace the fact that technology can be our friend when it's used responsibly, that's the main key.
Yes.
I think that when you don't use technology responsibly and you trust that, ChatGPT, I use it every day, but it's a good baseline for me to improve on some social media posts and stuff. I can write, but it's a tool and a resource that I can use. And I think that if our law enforcement officers aren't embracing technology to use it as a resource, then man, they're missing the mark. So anyway,
I agree with you 100% on that.
100%.
Yeah. So anyway, we like to end every show with some rapid fire questions. I hope you didn't study for them. Okay. So what's your favorite line from a cop movie, or your favorite cop movie?
My favorite cop, I don't know about movie, but show, is probably Chicago PD.
That's a good one.
Only because it's probably one of the most close to real shows I've seen as far as how detectives and cops actually work. I like some of the other ones, but, I know this is rapid, but when they sit there and do things in 5 seconds that I know take 5 days to do,
right,
I'm like, all right, I lost interest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. What's your favorite drink of choice when you're trying to relax?
Well, I'm not a drinker, so iced tea, but my partners are trying to get me into scotch, but they're failing. Yeah, I'm not a drinker.
What is
you know what you need to try? There's this awesome stuff called Angel's Envy.
I'm familiar with that. I've seen it.
You're not the only one in this room familiar with it.
Yeah, that's good. It's an angel, all right. Yeah. It can be an envy. But anyway, what's your favorite cop car? I know you weren't a cop, but at least what's your favorite patrol car?
I like what they're doing with the Tahoes. With it, it's one, it discourages a lot of the high-speed chases because it's bigger, but it's more secure for the officers, especially on side the road.
Yeah, they're a lot more roomy for sure.
Yeah,
a lot more roomy. J-Dub, you got anything else?
No, man. No, I just got really started thinking about that Angels Envy. I don't know why.
I got him distracted.
Yeah.
We're going to put all y'all's information there on the link. You can find more information about CloudGavel right here. And man, hopefully we'll see y'all at our 2024 Texas
We're gonna do our best to be there.
FOP and Tmpa conference there in July in Dallas. Man, that's it from us. We enjoyed you guys coming on, or are you coming on, driving all the way from your station out of Baton Rouge?
Baton Rouge.
Yeah, it's a pretty good clip. You flew today. You didn't drive.
Yeah, but Austin's a phenomenal city. So anytime I can come here, and they're all clients, so it's great to come here and see them. And again, thank y'all for what y'all do. It's a fantastic show, and I'm honored to be here.
That's cool.
We love having you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You guys take care. Stay safe. God bless you. And as always, may God bless Texas. We're out.